of our democracy, a place where citizens of different backgrounds and beliefs can still come together as one nation. Tomorrow, I'm pleased to announce that the Washington Monument, as well as the entire federal government, will be open for business. And that's because today, Americans of different beliefs came together again. In the final hours before our government would have been forced to shut down, leaders in both parties reached an agreement that will allow our businesses to get the loans they need, families to get the mortgages they applied for, and hundreds of thousands of Americans to show up at work and take home their paychecks on time, including our brave men and women in uniform. This agreement between Democrats and Republicans on behalf of all Americans is on a budget that invests in our future while making the largest annual spending cut in our history. Yep. Like any worthwhile compromise, both sides had to make tough decisions and give ground on issues that were important to them. And I certainly did that. Some of the cuts we agreed to will be painful. Programs people rely on will be cut back. Needed infrastructure projects will be delayed. And I would not have made these cuts in better circumstances. But beginning to live within our means is the only way to protect those investments that will help America compete for new jobs. Investments in our kids' education,
like voting in Libya,
in clean energy, and life-saving medical research. We protected the investments we need to win the future.
Yeah, you're at the corporation.
At the same time, we also made sure that at the end of the day, this was a debate about spending cuts, not social issues like women's health and the protection of our air and water. These are important issues that deserve discussion, just not during a debate about our budget. I want to thank Speaker Boehner and Senator Reid for their leadership and their dedication during this process. A few months ago, I was able to sign a tax cut for American families because both parties worked through their differences and found common ground. Now the same cooperation will make possible the biggest annual spending cut in history. And it's my sincere hope that we can continue to come together as we face the many difficult challenges that lie ahead, from creating jobs and growing our economy to educating our children and reducing our deficit.
Growing.
That's what the American people expect us to do.
Yes.
That's why they sent us here.
Yes.
A few days ago, I received a letter from a mother in Longmont,
You're growing?
Colorado.
If this is growing,
over the year,
show me.
her son's 8th grade class saved up money and worked on projects so that next week they could take a class trip to Washington, D.C. They even have an appointment to lay a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier. The mother wrote that for the last few days, the kids in her son's class had been worried and upset that they might have to cancel their trip because of a shutdown. She asked those of us in Washington to get past our petty grievances and make things right. And she said, remember, the future of this country is not for us. It's for our children. Today we acted on behalf of our children's future. And next week, when 58 graders from Colorado arrive in our nation's capital, I hope they get a chance to look up at the Washington Monument and feel the sense of pride and possibility that defines America.
Give them some good fluffy stuff to make them feel good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Why don't I just disappear already?
President Obama speaking from the White House. In about 2 minutes, we expect to hear from Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. We're joined again by CNN's Dan Lothian at the White House, John King, David Gergen, as well as Dana Bash on Capitol Hill, who broke the news that a deal had been reached for us just a short time ago. David Gergen, the president, again, sort of playing the role of mediator-in-chief, if you will. Can he continue to do that in this next budget battle to come?
That's a very good question, Anderson. I think there are two big questions coming out of this. One of them is the one John King has been raising, and that is, will the trust deficit between the White House and members of Congress, within Congress, between Democrats and Republicans, will that be reduced or will it grow as a result of these clashes? The other big question now for the president, after giving a very great speech, was as he enters these fights for 2012, will he come forward with a plan which is as audacious as the one that Paul Ryan, the Republican, has put forward about tackling entitlements and moving from the fights over billions of dollars to the new fights over trillions of dollars?
Dan Lothian, is that something the White House plans to do, come forward with a plan of their own?
Well, it's unclear at this point. I mean, certainly we have seen what happened in this particular case where the White House had been essentially taking a hands-off approach and letting lawmakers on the Hill essentially duke this out. And then when it came down to the final few days and the last hours, and the president rolled up his sleeves and essentially got his hands dirty. We expect that perhaps the White House will use a different tone in the next round of negotiations. But I can tell you what the president did tonight.
Dan, I got to jump in. Let's listen to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid.
Okay, go on.
Speaker Boehner and myself just a few minutes ago. This is the statement. We've agreed to a historic amount of cuts for the remainder of this fiscal year, as well as short-term bridge that will give us time to avoid a shutdown or get the agreement through both houses and to the president. We will cut $78.5 billion below the president's 2011 budget proposal, and we've reached an agreement on the policy writers. In the meantime, we'll pass a short-term resolution to keep the government running through Thursday. That short-term bridge will cut the first $2 billion of the total savings. Mr. President, I first of all want to express my appreciation to the Speaker and his office. It's been a grueling process. We didn't do it at this late hour for drama. We did it because it's been very hard to arrive at this point. I also want to express my appreciation to my counterpart, Senator McConnell. We talked during this process on a number of occasions. We have, as we say here, on many occasions, it turned out to be, we have a really terrific relationship. We do our best to protect each caucus. We have our battles here, but he's really a pleasure to work with, and I admire and appreciate his work for people of Kentucky and the country. Mr. President, this has been a long process. It has not been an easy process. Both sides have had to make tough choices, but tough choices are what this job's all about.
He's trying to talk like the president,
I
but
think it's important to note, Mr. President, as we see
fluff it up with a whole lot of woman fluffy
this
stuff.
is historic. $78.5 billion below the 2011 budget that we have been working off of. We've worked on many riders. It's what we've done has been difficult but important for the country. We all agree that there are many cuts that have to take place in the future. We understand them. We must get this country's fiscal house in order. But
Not gonna
the
happen.
American people have to make tough choices, and they're doing it every day. So should their leaders. That's our responsibility, all 100 of us, and 435 members of the House. The Speaker and I have reached an agreement that I've read will cut spending and keep the country running. We've agreed to a historic level of cuts for the remainder of this fiscal year, as well as a short-term bridge that will give us time to avoid a shutdown or get this agreement through both houses and to the president. I repeat, we will cut $78.5 billion, and we've reached an agreement, I repeat, for the second time on the policy writers. I do that because that has not been easy. In the meantime, we'll pass a short-term resolution to keep the government running
Like we're supposed
through
to
this coming Friday.
feel good, because it has not been easy. You have worked for us, and it has not been easy. You're such a good worker.
So, Mr. President, I, if with the permission of the Republican leader,
Such
ask
a good
unanimous
leech.
consent, Senate proceed to counter number 28, H.R. 1363, that a Reid-McConnell substitute amendment, a 7-day continuing.
Can't wait till the leeches are off of our backs.
The bill is amended be read a third time, and the Senate proceed to vote on passage of the bill as amended, that the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table, with all the above occurring with no intervening action or debate.
Is there objection?
Mr. President,
The Republican leader.
let me thank my friend, the Majority Leader, and Speaker Boehner for their outstanding work during this difficult negotiation. You know, Mr. President, we had an opportunity tonight to decide whether we wanted to repeat history
Well, there are only 3 people in
or
the
make
house.
history. Had we chosen to repeat
The only ones
history,
left getting paid.
we would have allowed a government shutdown. Instead, we decided to make history by
Oh, yeah.
implementing in the middle of this fiscal year,
Definitely making
as the
history.
majority leaders indicated, substantial reductions in spending. Now, these reductions, Mr. President, are in the billions.
Oh, wow.
Once we get through this process, by the end of next week, we will move on to a much larger discussion about how we save trillions.
by enacting, hopefully on a bipartisan basis, a budget that genuinely begins to get on top of this problem. And the problem, as we all know, is $14 trillion in debt and over $53 trillion in unfunded liabilities. The president's asked us to raise the debt ceiling. And Senate Republicans and House Republicans, and I hope many Democrats as well, are going to say, Mr. President, in order to raise the debt ceiling, we need to do something significant about the debt. My definition of significant, Mr. President, is that the markets view it as significant, the American people view it as significant, and foreign countries view it as significant. So for tonight, again, I congratulate the Majority Leader and the Speaker. This is an important first step, but just the beginning of what we need to do to get our house, our fiscal house, in order.
Yeah, burn it.
The Republican leader's right. We have a lot of work to do. The one thing I want to mention is how much I appreciate the support of
the Republic for the United States can step up and take over, and the government for the people instead of this government against the people.
It was so important.
I mean, sure, they got a lot of people working for them, all blindly, well, some even knowingly doing evil things for them, killing people in other countries and invading other people in other countries.
That's the chairman of the Appropriations Committee. Dan Inouye is here behind me tonight. He has been with his staff, tireless staff, working so hard. I applaud his.
And I have empathy for people and their families that might be getting
fantastic knowledge of what goes on,
losing income
as it relates to money
from this government, but don't worry, people. There's something else about the come that's good for all of us. We just got to get this leech off of our back,
all the staff, but it is
off of
important
the planet's back.
that my chief of staff, David Crone, has worked so very, very hard. And I want to mention one other person. I never met him until we started.
The U.S. corporation.
What we've been through, and that's
almost
I hope I don't get him in trouble. But that's John Boehner's chief of staff, Barry Jackson. He is a real professional. It's been very difficult to work through all this stuff, but I admire his professionalism. Of course, the White House staff has been indispensable. I would hope we could have a consent agreement approved at this time.
Licking his.
Is there objection to the majority leader's request? Without objection, so ordered.
He's even laughing about it.
Is there further debate on the bill as amended?
Let's go home.
If not, all those in favor of the bill as amended say aye.
I'm looking for another job.
All those opposed say no.
You're only going to pay till Thursday.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The bill is amended as passed.
Hey, you have till 12, it's 12:18 right now.
There you see the Senate voting to have a stopgap budget for the next, up until next Thursday, at which point they will have voted on the budget all the way through 2011. That you obviously just saw the Senate. It still has to be voted on in the House, so it's not a done deal yet. We're going to continue to follow it. Stay with us. We have a lot more ahead as lawmakers rush that stopgap bill through the House, more on what it means. Then President Obama will sign it. What happens next after the break? We'll talk to our political panel, David Gergen, Paul Begala, and Susan Molinari. We'll be right back.